let's go, because you know what I came here to do.
I don't get paid for overtime. I'm here to fight.
You see, Simon Jordan and his cronies at TalkSport are going to get or go nowhere near shit like this. How do you wait just before the two ladies are getting weighed in before not approving one of the opponents? Christina LINARDATOU not approved by the British Boxing Board of Control to fight Michaela Mayor, which would have been for the WBC interim lightweight title. You know, a very important fight. It gets you in position to fight the winner out of Katie Taylor and Chantel Cameron. Now, it says here, because I'm not no expert on women's boxing, right? And let me make sure I put the receipt there as well. The 30-year-old Wildheart, who is replacing LINARDATOU, has only lost one fight, a 10-round unanimous decision to France's Estelle Mosley in June 2019. Wildheart is 10-1 with 4 knockouts, a native of Sweden who resides and trains in England. You keep listening, yeah? Don't switch off yet. Wildheart has won 5 in a row since losing to Mosley, but she has beaten a low level of opposition in those bouts. The more formidable LINARDATOU, 14-2 with 6 knockouts, has only lost a pair of decisions to Katie Taylor and Delphine Persoon. She also has a win over Alicia Baumgardner. The more formidable fighter, that's what Boxing Scene says, right? She has been pushed out of a fight at virtually the last minute. Don't switch off yet. Don't switch off. Now, by the little I've researched, and I haven't researched much, LINARDATOU doesn't have no big promoter or no big backing behind her. Her last fight was in Greece, where she resides. Not really a hotbed for boxing, right? Michaela Mayor has been shipped out to the UK by Bob Arum to fight on the undercard of Joe Joyce's fight against Gilles Jean in the copper box. She's been shipped out. Top rank, just like Joe Joyce, are a juggernaut in boxing. Bob can't do nothing with Michaela in America, just like Clarissa Shields can't really get nothing done in America. So he shipped her out to the UK on this BT card. Everybody's looking forward to this LINARDATOU fight. Everybody. And I've watched some bits and bobs of LINARDATOU over the recent weeks because this fight was coming up. Everyone's looking forward to this fight. At the last minute, it's scrapped. Don't switch off yet. They wouldn't license LINARDATOU due to a permanent lens in her eye, which she has boxed with her whole career, including when she fought Katie Taylor in the United Kingdom in 2019. This is Dan Raphael speaking. It's me speaking, but these are Dan Raphael's words. She fought in the UK with the same lens against Katie Taylor, but now they won't clear her to fight. So what's different? Maybe the condition has deteriorated and maybe someone never told Dan Raphael that. Seems a bit dodgy to me. The board have no consistency. They're very selective with their practices. We know this. Ask Frank Warren about Oscar Holman, who was pulled off one of Frank Warren's cards in the 80s. Couldn't pass the brain scan. Had abnormalities. Then years later, Frank Warren was shocked to find Oscar Holman, an American heavyweight, was past fit to fight Gary Mason on a Mickey Duff card. Now, Oscar was a durable fella. He went the distance with Gary.
When it comes to medical matters, the board's rules are all powerful, so it is all the more important that they are consistent and beyond reproach. But it is in this, the medical arena, that the board's decisions have been most disturbing. Disquieting rumours have been circulating in boxing for several years that with the full knowledge of a senior board official, an overseas boxer was allowed to box on a Mickey Duff promotion while suffering from a potentially lethal skull condition. Dispatches can reveal that the boxer in question was an American heavyweight named Oscar Holman. In 1984, Frank Warren arranged a match for Holman in London, but it never came off.
When Holman arrived in the country, he had a skull x-ray test, which the board insists that all boxers should have, foreign boxers that is, prior to a fight in this country. And the report said he had thinness of the skull, which meant really couldn't fight.
The death of another boxer with a thin skull in 1982 had led the board to introduce compulsory skull x-rays, such as this one. The doctor who examined Holman forwarded a copy of his report to the British Boxing Board of Control. 2 years later, Gary Mason, a heavyweight promoted by Mickey Duff, fought an 8-round contest in Wolverhampton. His opponent, Oscar Holman. By now, John Morris had taken over from Ray Clark as General Secretary of the Boxing Board of Control.
But they allowed him to box, which I found very strange. In fact, I rang John Morris and asked him why, seeing as that, I knew he had a thinness of the skull.
Did you ring him before the fight or after the
Before the fight.
Despite having a damning medical report, and in spite of Warren's advance warning, John Morris, the board secretary, allowed Oscar Holman's fight on a Mickey Duff promotion to go ahead. When contacted by dispatches, John Morris said he had no knowledge of the Holman affair.
Do me a favour.
But this is the kind of practices the board does. And there's no accountability for the inconsistencies, never. They sit back unchallenged by the media until a disaster like Michael Watson happens. I'm not throwing shade at Michaela Mayor. I'm not, because she's going to do what's in her best interest. But I believe she's known that this fight wasn't going to go ahead for a little while. I believe LINARDATOU was set up. I do. I mean, as soon as the fight was announced that LINARDATOU was going to fight Mayor in the copper box, the board would have had record of this. But they sat on it until the last minute, just like they sat on Conor Benn's failed test, which Eddie gave straight away to them. And it stinks of corruption. It does. Now, just thought I'd inform some of you who are totally obsessed by, even if it means making up stories about fake, failed PED tests. Well, VADA has confirmed that Anthony Joshua and Jermaine Franklin both passed all VADA drug tests for that fight on April the 1st. I guess you're mad at Michael Benson now. You fucked up the fun. Hey, that's only VADA. Maybe UCAD might come up with something. Can you imagine the glum look on their faces? I don't care. He's a PED. I don't care what he says. I don't need your fuck receipts, bitch. Bitch. You know something? I enjoyed some of Adam KOWANACKI's performances. Like when he beat up the Southpaw Spilker. I enjoyed that performance. When he beat up Gerald Washington, I enjoyed that. And there's a few more fights I enjoyed. Now, when he turned down the AJ fight as a substitute for Jarrell Miller, he said he didn't have enough time to prepare, and he turned down several $1 million. A lot of people believed it was more Al Heyman than a KOWANACKI decision. They didn't want to give the manpower to Matchroom to save one of their cards, let's say. He turned down that fight to get turned over by Robert Helenius, who was an underdog. Got turned over for a fraction of what he would have got to fight AJ. He got paid in between $100,000 to $150,000 for the first Robert Helenius fight. And now, it looks like his services are no longer required at the PBC. And we'll next see him on the 24th of June at the MSG on the undercard of Berlanga versus Quigley on DAZN against Joe Cosumano, 21-4-0. Man, you should have got that Matchroom money a lot earlier, bro. That's what you should have did. A lot earlier. But good luck to him trying to reconstruct his career. Is Eddie trying to fatten him up for AJ? Just joking. So it looks like Martin Bakole finally gets himself a fight after beating Tony Yoka, who was 11-0 Olympic gold medalist. Martin Bakole got a majority decision over Yoka in France, taking his unbeaten record. He finally gets a fight against Ihor Shevazutsky. He's from the Ukraine. This will be on the undercard of Alan Babbage versus Lucas Rozansky in Poland. The card will be broadcast on Sky. It's not up on BoxRec yet. There's no details of Rozansky versus Babbage. Bakole takes on Shevazutsky from the Ukraine. He's 10-0 with 8 knockouts, 6'3". I haven't seen him. The truth is, out of his 8 victories, only one of them has been against an opponent with a winning record. Only one. And in his last two, when he stepped up against solid journeymen like Sokolowski and Kevin Johnson, he's been taking the limit. So we would expect Marty to breeze for him pretty easy. Though he might be durable, saying that. What it takes to succeed as a promotional outfit in the UK is a difficult balancing act, making a success out of domestic boxing. And what you're going to see is they're going to start drafting in a lot more foreign labour. Diego Pacheco was over here from Matchroom the other day. Michaela Mayo, she's fighting later on today. It's Saturday morning now. Because it's difficult promoting English champions and British champions. It's not easy. It's difficult, man. And I'm not going back to the 80s, which I could easily, but we don't have all day. But people don't remember when Carl Froch was struggling to get television dates. I'm talking the days when I used to see Carl in the ends. Carl Froch in the ends, because his girlfriend lived in the ends. Yeah. Probably didn't have a penny to fucking scratch together at the time. This is before Matchroom. Had a couple of conversations with him. Amir Khan, same thing. After he split with Frank Warren, where he fought on ITV and Sky, he had to head off to America. Because Sky wasn't what it is today in terms of boxing. You hear people talking about Eddie. Oh yeah, like Eddie's not repping the domestic market like he used to. He's falling off. Well, it's a hard juggling. It's especially hard for Eddie because he's got to promote the biggest fighter in the sport just in a couple of weeks in Guadalajara. He had a card in Phoenix last week. And he's in a tough position because I think if it was up to him, he'd say, I would just piss off the domestic scene right now and just go full throttle at it in the other territories. But he can't. He can't do that. The domestic market is his foundation. And Ben Shalom, he's got so much work to do. So much work to do. And I believe he will acquit himself with professionalism. But he's got so much work to do. So much fighters that he's got to keep happy. Domestic fighters. Not fighting for world titles. Fighting for English titles. Like big up Tyler Denny. He's 31 years of age. 16 wins. Has never scored a knockout. 2 losses and 3 defeats. Look at his form. Look at his form. After losing a majority decision to Linus Udofia in 2019, and Udofia is a good fighter. He was unbeaten. He's acquired the English title, and his last 5 opponents, all wins, have all been fighters with unbeaten records. He takes on Macaulay McGowan. Now, I don't know what's happened to the English title. It doesn't seem to be on the line for the 6th of May in Birmingham on the undercard of Boatsi versus Stepien. This is a decent card. You know, you got Sean McComb, 15-1-0, against Casey Benjamin, 15-2-1. And Casey can fight. I don't know much about Sean. But, you know, these guys have ambition. Super lightweight. I saw Casey fight Dalton Smith and give him a decent evening's work. That's for the WBO European Super Lightweight title. We got Lauren Price, 3-0, Olympic gold, against Kirsty Babington, who I believe is the European title. So this is the ladies representing, and this is the first British title fight contested between 2 women. It's history right there. That's history. We've got Tyler Denny. Like I said, unbeaten in his last 4 or 5, taking pure unbeaten scalps. If he wins again, he's going to be asking, yo, Ben, can you get me something more significant? And Ben is going to have to try and appease Tyler and do something for him. Because you're not just going to keep winning. You can't get near to the world rankings or European title shots, or even a British title shot for that matter. You know, look, this is a serious card. You got Corey Gibbs, I don't even know him, 17-1. Jimmy First, 14-1. These are still ambitious fighters who want to go places. We got Shakan Pitters from Birmingham, 17-0, former British champion at light heavy. He wants to go places, taking on Joel McIntyre. Ben Whittaker, 2-0, Olympic silver medalist. Been injured, been a bit of a slow start since he's turned pro there. Ben's got to develop him into an attraction and a draw because they broke the bank to get him and the likes of Fraser Clark over there. Ben was talking about winning the British title within a handful of fights. I bet you any money that Ben Shalom wouldn't risk him against Shakan Pitters this year. Might be a bit too risky. That'd be a good test for Ben if he's such a precocious talent and they're looking to fast track him. Someone like Shakan, yeah, why not? I mean, Shakan's lost to Dan Aziz. He's lost to Craig Spider Richards at domestic level. If Ben Whittaker is as good as what they paid for him, silver medalist, saying he can win the British title in a handful of fights, well, Shakan Pitters shouldn't be that far down the line. Shouldn't be too far away as a potential opponent. So that's a lot Ben has to juggle there on the domestic front, a whole lot. It's not easy because social media has brought about the most critical set of eyes, not just watching the boxers, but watching the promotions. And it's different these days. Watching boxing in the 80s and 90s, let's stick with terrestrial television. Back then, they didn't start the TV broadcast of a card with the prelims with the arena still empty on YouTube. And then you go to the main broadcast on whatever package you have, DAZN, BT, Sky. All we would get is the main event and maybe a chief support. Or they might pick out a fight from the prelims if there's a special talent or prospect coming up. They might give you a couple of rounds of his fight because there wasn't no female boxers on television back then. There's time constraints. They're not going to put boxing on for 3 hours. What about the news? What about the dramas? What about the soap operas that everyone else wants to see? No. And there's only a few channels as well. We're talking about the UK. Now, when Sky came along, you might get a 2-3 hour program of boxing. But even then, you're not getting all the prelims. You won't get all the like today. You can see all the prelims on YouTube, and then, you know, if you ain't got nothing better to do for the day, you can watch the prelims from 4 or 5 all the way up to the main portion until 10, 11 or whatever. So you're under the spotlight for what you produce all the time. There's no escape for a modern day boxing promoter. There's no escape. Either you're producing or you're not producing. And they're judging you from the prelims that you start. They're judging from there. I wasn't the only one who observed. Like, they got some guy in his living room in front of his bookshelves commentating on the prelims on the PBC card. Frank Sanchez, Devin Alexander versus Maestre. The guy wasn't even in the arena commentating. And when he was talking, it was so badly dubbed, it was like one of the old kung fu flicks where it's just totally out of sync. You know, we're talking about American boxing. We're used to a real glossy package from Showtime and HBO at its prime and pinnacle in the 90s and 80s. The Sowlands actually have a good deal on Channel 5 because you might get a 2-hour program from them starting at 10 till 12 or 11 or whatever, and they'll show the main event, and then they might show a few pre-recorded fights from the prelims, chief support, and that's it, we're out. It's easier actually doing it like that than having to broadcast the whole thing. You know, even 7 till 10 on the main portion is pushing it. Because sometimes you're looking at some of the fights and thinking, oh Lord, 3 hours is a long time. It's a long time. To keep potential consumers entertained, you need a good product.